I'm Cece Buckley, and this is day 5, the final day of the Global Summit for Peace in Cameroon. On day 1, as you know, we were joined by Chris Anu of the Interim Government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, as well as Dr. Anu-Eseme Jr. of the Cameroon Federalist Movement, who shared the Ambazonian and Federalist perspectives on the Anglophone Crisis. Today, both men have graciously agreed to return to the summit to respond to and engage in a discussion about questions we've received from the audience, as well as one rather challenging question that I came up with on my own. For each response given, the other party will have an opportunity to respond, and then the original respondent will have a final brief reply. It was determined through a coin toss that Chris will receive the first question. So we'll begin opening statements with Wilson Eseme. Wilson.
Hello, Cece. Hello, my brother, Anu. It's such an honor for me to take part in this Global Summit for Peace in Cameroon. Cece, I want to particularly thank you and your organization for putting this together. We are truly grateful and thank you for this great service. My name is Lobe Eseme. I was born in Kumba in the southwest region of Cameroon. I attended school at bilingual grammar school, Moliko Boya, which gave me the opportunity and my first exposure to the rest of Cameroon because we had students from all 10 regions, English speaking as well as French speaking. After secondary and higher education, I went to the university in Yaoundé, where I studied medicine. And at that time, it was the only medical school in the country. So naturally, we had students from all 10 regions. So this background may explain my ideology and the stance that I currently have, partly. In that we need the country to stay as one unit. I am also the author of a book. Let's Talk Cameroon, shall we? I have a copy here. This book was written in 2014, and in so many ways, it's a harbinger of the things that were to come in 2016. In addition to being a part-time author, I run 2 organizations, the Cameroon Federalist Movement and the Anglophone Action Group. Both organizations have a federalist stance. We want to see justice and fairness in West Cameroon, as well as a federalist system of government. So it's my hope that this segment will give us the opportunity to present our point of view. I want to thank my brother, Mr. Anu, for this opportunity. And I want to say here that we may have some differences, but there is no daylight between us when it comes to the anger that we have and for the treatment that we have been given since 1961. On that, we are one, And there may be some slight, opinion differences, but we are definitely in the same team. We're fighting the same fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilson. And Chris, can you give your opening statement, please?
Thank you, Cece, and your organization for all the effort you are putting out there to sort out a solution to this useless war that we're forced into by La République du Cameroon. Of course, I have no doubt that in your study of this conflict in Cameroon, you are quite aware that it was forced upon us. We didn't ask for it. Unfortunately, we are where we are today, and finding ourselves on your platform to kind of explain to the people exactly what we want and why we want it. Now, some of us, you find in the front line of this struggle, we never knew for a moment that a day will come, we will be doing this. We grew up seeing the Fonchas, the Munas, the Albert Mokongs, the Elad Kontang, the Munzus, the Ambassador for Songs, and so on and so forth, fighting for a free Ambazonia, where the people have the right to determine their own form of government. We never knew for a moment it was going to come up to this. But here is where we are, and I find myself in the middle of it. I grew up, of course, back home. I was born in Fontem local government. I went to primary school there, went to high school in Bamenda, went to Cas Bambili, graduated, went to Nigeria, did journalism, and I have been a journalist all my life. Of course, I'm also a trained minister of the gospel. I've worked here in the I've lived in the US for, I think, about 23 years now, working as one of the editors in the a weekly newspaper up in New Hampshire. And when this thing happened in 2016, I saw it as an opportunity to get some of the wrongs that have been done on the southern Cameroons corrected. I think then I was on the same side with my comrade, Dr. Wilson Eseme, because then we were all looking forward to La République du Cameroon responding to our cry for a return to the federal system. But we realized it just wasn't coming. And we thought, well, if that doesn't come, we have to look for something that has to come, that must come, that we must fight. And it was then we declared our restoration as in 1961. We have been fighting. Eventually, we came up with the interim government of Ambazonia. I was opted into the cabinet. And for 5 years, we are fighting for nothing but a free and independent Southern Cameroons.
Thank you. Now let's move on to the first question. Chris, are there any issues to address around agreements on peace definitions or the lack thereof, on the hurts and grievances, or on the historical facts?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. If I may, I would love you to, if you can make some little clarification as to what you mean by agreements on peace definitions. What exactly do you mean by peace definitions?
Well, this question came from a member of the audience, and I'm imagining that they're talking about how you perceive peace. Do you believe that there are agreements between, say, the Ambazonian perspective and the Federalist perspective on the meaning of peace? Because, of course, meaning is very subjective. The meaning of peace, what peace looks like.
Yeah, I would say this is our perspective to what peace means. We at the interim government of Ambazonia believe that any form of peace agreement should have to do with justice. And by justice, I mean rewriting the wrongs that took us to where we are in the first place. Of course, you talked about hurts and grievances. We are here today because there have been hurts and there have been grievances. Dr. Eseme will tell you, just as I will, that we didn't get here in 2016. These started, I would say, in 1961. I mean, this conflict, The crisis that became a conflict started right after our joining La République du Cameroon in 1961. Because after we joined La République du Cameroon, slowly but surely, everything in our heritage, everything that we inherited from our colonial past was eroded. And so from there and then, agitation started mounting. So what happened in 2016, I will call it the immediate cause of the conflict that we are in today. So yes, there are hurts, there are grievances. And so when anybody talks about peace, those hurts and those grievances have to be addressed first. To what end is another question. Is it to the end that you have one and indivisible Cameroon to have peace? We have ruled that out in the independent movement. Peace to what end? To the end that you have a federal Cameroon. We at the independent movement, we have also ruled out that option. And I guess in the course of this, I will be able to explain to you why we have ruled out the option of a federation, the option of one Cameroon. Let me add this. In this conflict, there are only two parties. And the two parties are those who believe in a one and indivisible Cameroon, including federalists, and those who believe in a sovereign and independent Southern Cameroons. I think it is very hard for somebody to say, I believe in the freedom of Ambazonians, but in a federal structure within Cameroon. I mean, anybody who says, I believe in a federal structure within the context of Cameroon is essentially saying, I am a Cameroonian. So anybody in that circle is a Cameroonian, a one and indivisible Cameroonian. But the other party who says we want independence, who is a Southern Cameroonian or Ambazonian independentist. So in this context, there are only two parties here. Those who believe in one Cameroon, maybe in different structures, including federalism, and then the other parties that believe in a free and independent Ambazonia as a country. So for us, on the independence side, we don't see anything that would bring peace to that country that doesn't end or doesn't discuss the form of state being a free Southern Cameroon against an independent French Cameroon. That is the only context of peace we see here. And again, I will be giving you reasons why I think we have no other option but peace that leads to a free and independent Ambazonia. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Wilson, would you like to respond to Chris, or would you prefer to go on and answer the question directly?
I will just go on, if with your permission, to answer the question directly.
Absolutely.
The late United States Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan used to say that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but no one is entitled to their own facts. Because an opinion is like a mouth. Everyone has one. But facts are stubborn. They are what they are. A fact is a fact. What is certain, what is true, is that our country went through very traumatic times, like all the other countries out there which were colonized. Colonialism was evil. Let's just call it for what it was. It was evil because it involved oppression of another group of people by one group, and it was just very bad. In so many ways, the troubles we have in Cameroon today are symptoms of this colonialism. And we are manifesting, I would say, symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder on a community, at a community scale and level. And why we may question why the United Nations, what gave them the authority to determine who gets independence and how and why. We may question the manner in which that came about. We may question and ask so many questions. But in the end, after we peel all the skins of the onion, after we separate fiction from fact, and after we try to separate fantasy from reality, we are left with the truth. And here is the truth. On 21 April 1961, the United Nations General Assembly endorsed a resolution. It was the resolution 1608, chapter 15. That resolution, the title of that resolution was as follows, and I'm going to read it here. The future of the trust territory of the Cameroons under United Kingdom administration. This resolution was based on plebiscites which took place in February of that same year. And I'm also going to read the exact words of that resolution. So, Resolution 1608, Section 2, Part A. The United States General Assembly endorses the results of the plebiscites as follows. The people of the Northern Cameroons have, by a substantial majority, decided to achieve independence by joining the Independent Federation of Nigeria. That's for Northern Cameroons. Section B, the people of the Southern Cameroons have similarly decided to achieve independence by joining the Independent Republic of Cameroon. Now, a book like this one can mean 1,000 things to 1,000 readers, because books have many words and can be subject to interpretation or misinterpretation. But this resolution is not a book. It's a short sentence. The people of Southern Cameroons have decided to achieve independence by joining the Independent Republic of Cameroon. Practically, what that means is that we were joined at the hip with the Republic of Cameroon to achieve our independence. That is not my ideology. That is not my opinion. That is not my interpretation or misinterpretation. That is a fact. And all the viewers out there who want to do this, check for themselves, just go to the internet, type United Nations Resolution 1608 on Southern Cameroons, and you will be able to see what I have just told you. Is that the best thing that could have happened to us? Of course not. But history is what it is. It's stubborn. It's actually embarrassing, to be honest with you, Cece, to see that we had to go through this trauma. So, having said that, I see the problem in a slightly different light from my brother. I see that, yes, we have enormous problems in Cameroon, but these problems can be fixed. And further down the line, hopefully, I'll be able to show you and explain why I think that can be fixed in the context of a federation. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Chris, would you like to respond?
I definitely would like to. Thank you. Thank you, my brother, for your presentation there. You mentioned quite a number of points there, quoting from 1608 and articles of the United Nations, and quoting the referendum, the plebiscite of 1961. You have essentially stated that the Southern Cameroons voted to join with La République du Cameroon, and with reference to 1608 that you have quoted. Now, if you recall, you will remember that 1608 also made a provision for Fumban. And what happened in Fumban? Fumban was essentially meant, and Cece, I'm glad you are making this, you're hosting this conference in reference to Fumban. What happened in Fumban? The problem with, what Fumban was supposed to do, it was supposed to have come out with the modalities for what kind of union between the Southern Cameroons and French Cameroon. Unfortunately, Comrade Wilson, you and me, we know that nothing came out of Fumban, which is one of the reasons we are in this dilemma. When you hear Southern Cameroonians, for example, say, show us the Article of Union, the agreement between that binds the two territories together. Nobody up to today has been able to give us one, show us one, because Fumban just never provided one. And so we say, nothing bound us together then and today. And so if we were going back to 1608, you will realize that 1608 was never accomplished. And that is why every independentist say, we are essentially, when I say we, I mean the Southern Cameroons is essentially a recolonized territory by La République du Cameroon. Because if we go by your argument that the Southern Cameroons voted to join with La République du Cameroon, you will also recall that that vote that was conducted gave Cameroon, the Southern Cameroons, its own sovereignty. The French Cameroon already had sovereignty January 1960. They were to come together as two sovereign states. They both were going to keep their own heritage, their own culture. But of course, you and me, we know that only the Southern Cameroon's heritage and culture has never been kept. Not only that, if we go into the founding, the understanding from the onset, it was made very clear that Southern Cameroonians have the right of a rethink of a union with French Cameroon after 30 years. 30 years. Now, you also will agree with me, Southern Cameroon, as I said, all the way from 1961, started agitating the whole thing. It is more than 30 years, and Southern Cameroonians are saying, since Yaoundé will not listen to us, Yaoundé will not give us an opportunity even to sit down, even amongst you who believe in a federal Cameroon, Yaoundé will not as much as allow you hold a conference to discuss federation. So you imagine that if after 30 years, you are not even allowed to sit down and talk federation for that country, going back to federation in that country, you realize there is just no hope talking about federation. And it is a good reason why Ambazonians are saying, if we cannot sit down as much as even mention federalism, we are going back to what we were prior to April 21, 1961. Comrade Wilson, the word federalism is an abomination in the ears, you know that, of any political leader in French Cameroon. It is because of the word federalism. Ago Bala spent time in jail. It is because of the word federalism. Dr. Fontem Neba spent time in jail. It is because of the word federalism we still have many political detainees in Yaoundé, in Douala, all over the place in that country today. It is because of the word federalism that we have so many Southern Cameroon's refugees in the diaspora. So I'm saying this to say that I don't think this problem is resolvable as you suggest, because if it were resolvable, nobody will be in jail for talking federalism. Where is Cardinal Toomey today? Cardinal Toomey conducted a poll, and it suggested that, I think it said, is it 68% of Southern Cameroonians want their own country? Even though Cardinal Toomey was gunning for a federal Cameroon, as respected as he was, Cameroon did not listen to him. How about their own Dieudonné Essomba, who from day one of this conflict, he kept on telling them, I mean, Dieudonné Essomba is the same tribesman with Paul Biya and the ruling class in Yaoundé. From day one, he started preaching to them. Sit on the table and talk with Anglophones, of course, as they call it. Sit on the table, discuss federation with them. They never. Comrade, it's been over 30 years that, the time period we had to have a rethink over the union with French Cameroon. 30 years are over. Besides, even if that clause wasn't there, the United Nations conventions consider us a people's group. If at any time we say we no longer want to be with French Cameroon as a people's group, I think we deserve that opportunity. And for the time that we have waited in petition, you are aware of AAC 1, AAC 2, they were never about an independent Ambazonia. They were about a federal Cameroon. But again, unfortunately, they never listened to us. So to suggest that these problems can now be resolved and we just move on, I think we have gone past that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And Wilson, you may have the final word if you'd like.
Definitely. That's a lot to unpack. But let me just respectfully disagree with my brother here. I don't think it's because of federalism that almost 1 million people have been internally displaced, maybe 500,000 externally displaced. I don't think it's because of federalism that people are being killed in Cameroon. Students are being prevented from going to school and kidnapped for ransom. I think the reason all those things are happening is because there is a war going on between my brother's side and the government of Cameroon. That's the reason we have all these things going on. And let me say this, I will be the first person to tell you, I agree, Fumban was a mess. As a matter of fact, if you look at the 1961 Constitution, it's such a disgrace, you will not even imagine that any leader will agree to those terms. But that is what they agreed to. I don't know if they were under some kind of influence, they gave them something, but they agreed to a document that was a betrayal. That is what it was. But Fumban was after 1608. 1608 said you achieve your independence by joining the Independent Republic of Cameroon and then meet with them to work out the modalities of that arrangement. And our leaders made a mess of it. And I agree with my brother there. That's why Our marginalization started the day Mr. Ahijo signed that federal constitution on October 1, 1961. Actually, it was the day before, but promulgated the next day, September 3rd. So the die was cast already. That does not cancel the fact that we had an endorsed resolution from the world's governing body that granted us the independence. And so we will see, and I will place the blame squarely on the two governments that we've had, the Ahijo government and the regimes, you want to call them. Yes, they have done a really bad job. But my brother, are we going to throw away the baby with the bath water just because we are angry? Remember, the Cameroon government is just a caretaker of the power of the people. Mr. Biya does not own that country. That land belongs to all of us. Someday he will go. He will. He and his people will go. The land will remain. The people will remain. Okay, Fontaine will still be Fontaine. Kumba will still be Kumba. We can fix this. And I understand your frustration, because for how long, you say, must the learning curve last? Well, sometimes it takes that long. It takes that long, because if we can prevent one life, just one life, maybe we can, take just a little longer. We have dug ourselves in a very big hole for 40 years. And I'll explain this later. It's going to take time to climb out of that hole. It's a pretty deep hole, but we can do it. He mentioned the independent Republic of Ambazonia. I think he very conveniently avoided a word. The Independent Federal Republic of Ambazonia. Now, he believes in federalism. I would say my brother is a federalist, and he is. He actually said that he is a federalist. He was a federalist before, but I still think he is. Because if you are not a federalist, why would you want an independent Federal Republic of Ambazonia? Which means that the tenets of federalism are strong, and he knows it. They know it. If we can do it they want to do it for Ambazonia, well, the Cameroon Federalist Movement is saying, if federalism is so good, we can do it for the rest of the country and keep the country intact. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to question number 2 now. And
Cece,
yes.
I'm sorry, would you allow me just a minute or two to just touch on a point or two that Comrade Wilson mentioned, please?
Wilson, are you amenable to that?
That's fine.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Comrade. Just three things that you mentioned. You talked about 1608 as asking the Southern Cameroons to have independence by joining. No, I don't think that was the case. The 64 countries that voted in the provision of 1608 that voted for the independence of Southern Cameroons, and the 23 that voted against, and I think two abstentions that voted remain by the sidelines. They were voting for the independence of the sovereignty, I mean to say, of the Southern Cameroons. The union, the idea of voting to join French Cameroon or Nigeria was the making of British and French politicians, and we blame the British in particular for that arrangement. That came after 1608. But anyways, I just wanted to mention that. Now, you talked about coexisting. we will not settle this thing based out of emotions, because if we thought that after Bia somebody else will come whom we can work with, I think history tells us that as far as Francophones are concerned, Ambazonian or Southern Cameroonians will never find one Francophone that we can work with. When Ahijo left, for example, or when Ahijo was still there, we all thought that when he is gone and his dictatorship is gone, the next person who takes over from him will treat the Southern Cameroons better, isn't it? And when Bia actually took over and was preaching the New Deal and so on, everybody embraced him and said, wow, thank God Ahijo is gone. But we didn't know that Bia would turn out to be worse than Ahijo. Now, their last campaign, Kamto was the frontline opposition leader. Kamto was in the diaspora on a number of occasions. Kamto refused to meet with us in the diaspora, talking about the Southern Cameroons and Ambazonia. And you think that after he has become president on he is surrounded with all the powers, he will now decide to listen to the grievances, the hurts of Southern Cameroonians and change? Absolutely not. But lastly, to correct your point about me still being a federalist, no, I will say this. At a point in time, we were all federalists up to October 2017. We were all federalists because we thought if these people are reasonable enough to listen to us, to sit down, talk with us, we would take federalism. That's what we argued for. But my brothers, since then, we've moved away from it because imagine we are 5 years into this conflict, not even their parliament. I mean, the parliament, including the Senate, has thought to sit down to talk about even that federation. Federation is an abomination. You know that they consider federation secession. So no, we realize that we're not going to get one from them, and we have moved away from it. I am not a federalist. Never think of being a federalist any day forward. We will fight this fight. If we don't get it, independence, we will keep on fighting, even if it will take us another 40 years. We have no choice. Thank you.
And Wilson,
If
you
don't
can
mind,
reply.
one line, Cece, if you don't mind.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, again, my brother, let me be the first to tell you that President Bia has been a terrible president. He has been most unreasonable. But is his bad leadership worth the life of a single West Cameroonian? Are we going to burn down the house just because a president is unreasonable? Again, I understand your passion, I understand your anger, I subscribe, and I fully support you in that anger. The only difference we have is on how to express, on how to deal with that anger. I still believe, brother, and I really do, that we can win this. We can still, save Cameroon from the hands of the people running that country. You mentioned Kamto and all the others. Yes, we can. Is it going to be easy? No, but we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to question 2, and this time it will go to you first, Wilson. Again, this question is from the audience. What are the concrete agreed upon starting points for healing this conflict?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to put my physician hat for a few seconds, if you don't mind. If I have a patient that has a problem and I'm trying to treat that patient, the very first challenge I have is to find out what is wrong with that patient, find out the diagnosis, because the diagnosis will inform the treatment. If the diagnosis is not clear or confusing, then I'm going to have difficulty managing my patient. So here is the problem we have in Cameroon. Of course, the very first thing is peace, because we're now in a state of war. So the very first urgent need is to have a ceasefire. Now, once we have that out of the place, a number of things must happen. So for anyone out there, and this goes to support what my brother was saying earlier, because he went and listed a number of grievances. So if there's still anyone out there, any viewer who still doubts there is an Anglophone problem, let me just settle this once and for all by giving a few examples. So we have a country that has been quote unquote independent for 60 years. And both presidents have been from East Cameroon. Well, you'll say, well, just two presidents, so well, you cannot have an Anglophone alternate. Well, that can go, but let's go to the areas of sovereignty, okay? Those 5 areas I mentioned during my presentation on Saturday. So let's talk defense, national defense. So when we joined East Cameroon in 1961, statistically, we were 20%. So that will mean that out of every 5 cabinet members for a particular department, you will expect to see 1 from West Cameroon. So national defense, has there been a single West Cameroonian head of that cabinet position? No. All right, we'll go to the other one, external relations. None. National police, 0. Finance, no. What about the close advisors to the president? The number 1 advisor to the president is the Secretary General at the presidency. There have been over 10 of them in the course of our history. Any West Cameroonian? No. Well, someone will say, but that's just for the executive branch. What about the legislative branch? Well, we have a Senate. Is it headed by a West Cameroonian? No. What about the House, the Parliament? We've had a number of speakers. None. Well, one has been a West Cameroonian, to be fair. And then the legislative branch, Supreme Court, not a single West Cameroonian. Constitutional Council, none. The government will say, but we've given you the position of Prime Minister. Well, to a Western viewer, the post of Prime Minister is a serious position, not in the Cameroon context. In Cameroon, the Prime Minister is appointed by the president. Therefore, he serves or she serves at the pleasure of the president. Our Prime Minister has no executive powers. He cannot even appoint his own ministers. And there are situations that we know of that other ministers openly disrespect him. So that position and that argument from the government makes no sense. So that's where we are. We have been systematically marginalized and placed in the back of the room for 40 years. Any West Cameroonian should be angry, because you look at the numbers, because numbers don't lie, the statistics are clear, there is an Anglophone problem. No reasonable person can argue that. What the government needs to do is A, acknowledge the existence of this problem, which so far they haven't, because we haven't heard the president himself come out. Another thing to say is this: for over almost 40 years that President Biya has in power, he has not given a single speech of national import in English. I'm talking about end of year message, the Youth Day's message, or the National Day that they are celebrating on May 20. I don't even know how they got to May 20. Not a single one in English. You have to be of a particular mindset to do that. I know from people that I've spoken with that he can speak English, he can certainly read English, but why hasn't he done this? There is something deep about this man that we don't understand. But the government has to acknowledge the existence of this problem. That's number one. Number two, they have to acknowledge the role they have played in the West Cameroonian problem. And number three, they have to acknowledge that it is their responsibility to fix it by organizing an inclusive dialogue, not the one they had in Yaoundé that I attended. That was a shame because the government was the organizer, they were the jury, the judge, they were everything. We don't want that. We need an inclusive, open, that if possible, with mediators, neutral mediators, people like yourself with reputations on handling these kinds of things. So that's where we start. That's how we can really solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris, would you like to respond or would you like to launch into your own answer?
I would like to respond if I can. What the solution that Dr. Wilson put out there, I think to most of us would be considered very cosmetic, very, very cosmetic. The reason being that no level of appointments given to Southern Cameroonians in that country is going to equate the level of development that the Southern Cameroons would see in a free and independent country. Give them all these appointments today as a solution to this conflict. Comrade Wilson, you know as well as I do that in 10 years, just in 10 years, they will take back everything that they have given. You've just mentioned the position of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, they go out and they make their propaganda, they tell the world how, you know, the Prime Minister is one of us. They don't understand why we are lamenting. And yet, you know, as you have said, that Prime Minister doesn't even have the powers to appoint his own cabinet. He doesn't. And so if you are suggesting that if we have equitable distribution of some of these top portfolios in that country, it will help. It will not help us because they are all cosmetic and they have the powers to withdraw them in the course of time. That is a problem with that. That is a problem with that. Now, also, you look at this in another angle. What does those appointments have to do with the national investment budget? It doesn't change anything. As you have stated, the Southern Cameroons makes up only 20% of the total population of that country. It's a little chunk, it's a smidgen of the total population of that country. You know the records as well as I do, that when it comes to their national investment budgets for over the years, the southern region that is not as populated as Bamenda town, I mean just Bamenda city, my brother, they have double the national investment budget for those, for both the northern zone and the southern zone combined. Many people do not know this. So You know what they're gonna do if you say they should create all this, give us all this, create all these positions and give them to us? They will have no problem at all making those appointments, creating departments without portfolios, and injecting Ambazonian, Southern Cameroonians into those positions. And yet they turn out to be nothing, empty. The question is, what are the concrete agreed upon starting points for the healing of this conflict? This is what we at the independent bloc believe. The way to start the healing process, first of all, a coming together of the two parties. The two parties means La République du Cameroon and the independentists, Southern Cameroonians. They come together. They both agree for a ceasefire. So many people want peace. We all want peace. And so we believe in a ceasefire that is then followed by negotiation. So first, a coming together of the two parties. A ceasefire agreement is reached with French Cameroon soldiers pulling out of Ambazonia. And then Ambazonian fighters lay down their arms. I have always said a ceasefire is always very, very easy. When the COVID-19 started, we had a number of meetings with officials of the United Nations pushing the Secretary General's idea of a ceasefire in recognition of the pandemic. And we told the United Nations officials that we are ready for a ceasefire. If French Cameroon troops pulled out of our territory, Ambazonia restoration forces, we have nobody, absolutely nobody to fight. The problem is that the international community thinks that Ambazonia should lay down arms, but French Cameroon troops should remain in the territory, moving door to door, killing people, abducting people, taking ransom, raping women, and burning down cities. No, we're not going to sit here and see that happen. So the solution, the way to start with the solution is let the two parties meet, agree on the modalities for a ceasefire. And then what comes next after that? The route, the roadmap to a permanent negotiation should then follow. That is what we believe. And talking about a roadmap, we're not talking about going into the root causes of the conflict. Because I think there is no way, if anybody thinks we can end this conflict without looking into the root causes of the conflict in the first place, no, it is not going to end. It is not going to happen. And I think this is what we really need to make very, very clear to people in French Cameroon. There is no way we will start negotiations without the root causes being on the table. That is where we are.
Okay. If you don't mind,
Thank you, Chris.
Chip in something there, Cece?
Actually, yes, since Chris did segue very seamlessly from his response to you into his own answer, I'd say it's time for your response. And then Chris, if you'd like, when Wilson is finished, you'll have an opportunity to reply again. So yes, please, Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, as a West Cameroonian, I would like to think that everything starts and ends with the problems of West Cameroon. However bad the government of Cameroon and however bad they have treated West Cameroonians, the truth is their injustice and their foolishness and bad governance actually has been a little bit generalized. See, my brother mentioned the investment budget that disproportionately favors Mr. Bia's region, and that is true. But here's another fact. Mr. Bia's region is about 730 something thousand inhabitants, but they have 11 members of parliament.
Right.
The north region of Cameroon has almost 2 million inhabitants, so almost 3 times the population of the south region, which is the president's region, but they have only 12 parliamentarians. So the bad governance, the injustice is not only limited to West Cameroon, it's actually more generalized than that. We are looking for a solution that not only solves the West Cameroonian problem, but solves the entire Cameroon problem. Because there's one thing, I don't know if you know this, Cece, and some of the viewers may not know this, but those boundaries of regions, southwest region, northwest region, littoral, these are arbitrary lines, vestiges of colonization, most of them. After President Biya came to power, he created 3 other regions, but most of those lines were drawn by the colonial powers. Mr. Anu has, he comes from an area that shares boundary with the Western region. Similar cultures, similar tradition, by the way, beautiful tradition. There are regions in the southwest, areas in the southwest region that also share similar cultures with the littoral, equally beautiful culture. So Cameroon, we were one before the Portuguese and the Germans and the British, and all those people made a mess out of it. Look at me. Do I look like Anglo-Saxon? The definition of Anglo-Saxon is Germanic inhabitants who inhabited England in the 5th century. How does that concern me? I am an African. I'm a Kumba man. I have my tribe. That is who I am. Anglo-Saxon is something that was forced upon me by an accident of history, where we live in a world where the strong people oppress the weaker ones and impose their opinions and their values on them. I am a Cameroonian, if that name is still permitted. I still think we should change that name. But anyway, for now, I am a Cameroonian, and I think we can solve our problem with structural, institutional changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I may come in about a minute, please.
Yes, you can certainly reply.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Listen, I do not think that Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians, have to be the sacrificial lambs for all of Cameroon. Because when you say that the south region of Paul Biya is 700 people and they have 11 parliamentarians, in the Northeast are 2 million and they have virtually nothing, you are essentially saying the whole thing is a Cameroonian issue. It's a Cameroonian problem. And that is where I disagree with you very, very strongly, because as far as I know, the Northeast are not yet fighting. They didn't take up arms. They haven't complained that, oh, see what they are doing in the South and see what we are getting here. When they had a hijo, when the Northeast had a hijo, neither did I hear the South, the Southerners, talking about the Ebolowa and the Yaoundé and so on. We never heard them complain. But each time that the Southern Cameroonians protest, agitate, then we hear all these Cameroon solution, instead of what? A Southern Cameroon solution. They know this, having lost their heritage. And you talked about being Anglo-Saxon. If you are not Anglo-Saxon, no, I am by heritage. We are the ones who have lost our educational system, our Anglo-Saxon educational system. We didn't have any Banwa educational system or Bafor educational system. We had the Anglo-Saxon educational system. We had the common law legal system. We had our police force. We had, I mean, you know these things I'm talking about. They were only common to us. So no, again, I am Anglo-Saxon, and as far as I know, Francophones are not crying that they lost their educational system, they lost their legal system, they lost their banking system. We are the ones who are crying. When we protested the GCE results, a Cameroonian solution came in. You know what has become of the GCE board? It is no longer managed by Ambazonians, Southern Cameroonians, not even by our parents. It is managed from Yaoundé. Yet we all know the GCE board was a Southern Cameroon problem. When we cried and protested the GCE system, it became also a Cameroon problem. Remember Adamon Damjoya's educational reforms, right? So, comrade, I think we're not going to be the sacrificial lambs for all of Cameroon. Non-French Cameroon citizen has died. Out of the 30,000 that Radio France International is now telling us, only Southern Cameroonians are paying the price for it. And I think to generalize it and make it a Cameroon problem is a great mistake. We don't have men with integrity in that part of the country who can ever do what you think that can happen. It's a good idea you are saying out there. But again, for 60 years, why didn't they do that? A year.
Well, Sim, would you like to reply, or shall we move on to the next question?
Let's move on to the next question, please.
Okay. And this one will go to you, Chris. How is a separate but equal state possible?
Well, I think that is a very simple question. Those two states existed before, and it was possible. Not until the colonialists came in. Comrade Eseme talked about the problems with colonization as being the main issue at stake here. I really think that at this time, at this moment in time, we don't have to blame these problems on our colonial past. Rather, we have to blame it on French Cameroon trying to colonize or colonizing the Southern Cameroons. That is where the main problem is. Of course, there are facilitators, accomplices to that art. But yes, the two states, the two nations can live apart as good neighbors. And this is how that would happen. We will live, we will possibly live as two states because we don't have any boundaries to fight over. We still have our international boundaries well marked. Dr. Eseme mentioned my county being, bordered by the western region of La République du Cameroon. You go to that boundary, you will find the pillars still standing on the ground, separating the BLM County or Ambazonia from the south, from that western region. Our boundaries are there. And so it is easy, very, very easy to separate the two states. Nobody's gonna fight about it. You go to Bakassi, of course, the boundaries are well marked also. We can also have these two states coexist, exist as independent states, as neighbors. If our people will take back their country, run their own monetary system, run their own legal system, run their own educational system, manage their own local government. It will interest you, Cece, to know that for 60 years and counting, 60 years and counting, never once have the people of Cameroon, and I mean both Cameroons, never have they had the opportunity to elect their own local leaders. Their mayors are appointed. Their governors are appointed. Everything is by appointment. Consider the recently created so-called regional councils. They were created in the guise of, giving back some power to the people. But guess what? Their administrators are appointed by presidential decree. The councillors are appointed. They conducted some fraudulent election in which people were picked by a list and made members of that council from Yaoundé. How about the governors? The governors are appointed. And these governors are not even indigenous of these communities. In the Northwest, for example, as I call it, the governor comes from Bafoussam Mbunda, which is the western region of La République du Cameroon. He doesn't understand English. In the Southwest, the governor is a son of Yaoundé, who doesn't even understand English. And these are the guys who give us labels. They call us dogs. They call us 2 cubes of sugar. They call us Nigerians. So the moment all these leave our territory, we will be able to live as a country, and French Cameroon able to live as a country. There will be no problem. We just want a situation where we want our people to rule themselves. We want our people to decide their own fate, their own leaders, not the arrangement that we have now. Now, to conclude this war again has been raging on for 5 years, for 5 good years. You would think that if there was good faith from La République du Cameroon, that when they talk of decentralization, they will begin to ask the people to elect their own leaders. They have never. And so we think that the only way for the 2 states to exist is for each state to have its own independence, its own power, and have their people control their affairs. I think we will do this very easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And Wilson, would you like to respond to Chris, or would you like to launch into your own answer?
I'll just go ahead and address the question. And I think the ideas are actually coming together. I agree with my brother, everything he said in his response to that question, of course, except the solution. And I just want to reiterate here that his anger is justified. His emotion and passion is right. His cause is just. I support that. Because if I can just paraphrase or rephrase the question, how is it possible for us to have a federated system of government? And that's the beauty. All the things that my brother outlined in his, are the same things that federalism can bring to Cameroon. The last time I checked, there are a total of 124 tribes. We already have the basic structural requirement for federalism. We have these tribes in their respective areas. All we need to do is to empower them to elect their own local government officials. It can be done. We give them the power that Mr. Anu was talking about, to be in control of their own destiny, the masters of their own future, except, of course, those areas of sovereignty that the federal government will have. The current setup where the president and his people are doing these regional councils, and they said it was as a result of the dialogue in Yaoundé, is a shame. Because you have a regional council president, apparently elected, not directly by the people. I don't know how they even come up with such. It takes the mind of a genius of an evil nature to actually come up with that possibility that regional councillors are elected not by the people directly, but by councillors of I don't know. Anyway, but the governor, the appointed governor, who is the representative of the president, is the boss of the regional council president.
Right.
That is crazy. That is crazy. We don't want that. Federalism will permit local government authorities to manage their own affairs. But here is a fact, and here is a reality. We have spent 60 years digging ourselves into a very deep hole. It is not possible to imagine that overnight we're going to solve this problem. It's going to take us time. I'm not suggesting it's going to take us 60 years. No, of course. I think we can do this in a couple of years. But we have to be aware and be honest to accept that the 60 years of this corruption has trained a different level of people that will need generations to repair. Because the average Cameroonian psyche now is to bribe, to give a bribe, even in situations where a bribe has not even been asked, because that is how they have lived for 60 years. It's going to take us time to put this structure together. Imagine the United States of America. We all saw what happened on January 6th. This is a country with 350 plus years of democracy, and we came this close to a dictatorship. So the institution of federalism will take time, but there's a group of people that the system has empowered and made rich, billionaires who never created a business in their entire life. They became rich just by occupying high-level government positions. We have to control these people, because these are the people who are going to threaten the existence of any federalist structure, because they have the means to start trouble. We'll have to control them. But after everything is said and done, the truth is, we spent only about 44 years in the trusteeship with the British and the French. And we've already been tied in this at the hip with our brothers and sisters from East Cameroon for almost 60 years. How can we imagine that it's even possible to go back? Suddenly, being slaves to the French and the British is now enticing for us to go back and call ourselves British citizens or British, I don't know, subjects, begging for them to recognize us as Anglo-Saxons. No, we are not that. We are who we are. We are Bantu people for the most part. We are Africans, and we can use our traditional setups, system that's already in place to fix the problems that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, would you like to respond?
I would definitely like to thank you. Dr. Eseme, we would definitely not go in for any federalism. And the reasons are very obvious. our people didn't have to die in these numbers, only for French Cameroon to come back and say, okay, let's talk federalism. But besides that, federalism has never been in their agenda. And if it comes tomorrow, we will tell them it is too late. They didn't have to kill 30,000 of our people, as reported by Radio France Internationale, to give us federalism. And let me also add that La République du Cameroun has no legitimacy, no legal right to tell us or give us what we want. As a people's group, we have the prerogative to decide for ourselves what we want to be, what we want to see. In this war, as you know, we have hundreds of thousands of refugees in foreign lands, of course. We have close to 1 million internally displaced. In those millions, they have no homes left in their villages. We have over 400 settlements, villages, burned down and counted. Tell me, why would anybody settle for any federation or federalism with La République du Cameroun after all of this damage, when they could just have in 2016 with Agbobala, with Tassang Wilfred, with the students, Fontemneba and the rest, when they could have just in this 2016 say, let's sit down on the table and talk about what you want. But these compatriots that I'm talking about, when they mention federation, they were called names. They were picked up and dumped in prisons in Yaoundé. You know that. Again, some of them are still there today. Now they have killed 30,000 of us and caused all this destruction, moving people into refugee camps and so on. What is the incentive for us to go talking federalism after all of this? There is none, just none. Because one thing is clear. If they give it today, or if they agree to it today, I bet you, you know, as I do, they will take it after 10 years, after 20 years. They will come with policies that slowly but surely take back everything. They say once bitten, twice shy. We're not willing to walk the same walk that our ancestors walked and led us to where we are today. I think we have learned our lessons. You call them your brothers. I don't think they are brothers. If they were brothers indeed, we wouldn't be here today talking about this. They are not brothers. We don't consider them brothers. We consider them our enemies. I think we have all seen that in their past election, that their frontline leaders would not even as much as address this conflict. That means if he had become president, we would still be in this war today fighting. So, and let me say that we are not also seeking the recognition of the British, the Americans, or whatever you call it. No, we have our recognition already by virtue of our independence in 1961 and the restoration of it in 2017. We are not looking for it. That is why we are fighting. If we were looking for their recognition, we wouldn't be fighting. We are fighting because it is our duty to take back that which belongs to us. And whether they recognize us or not, Somaliland has proven that without American recognition, without British recognition, without any power recognition, you can fight to take back that which belongs to you. And that is exactly what we are prepared to do. Federation is off our calendar. And unfortunately, it got here, but you blame French Cameroon for declaring war and pushing us to the wall. There is no retreat here.
If I may just say something here, Cece.
Of course.
I think we should be careful, brother, to not confuse the Cameroon government with the people of East Cameroon. The Cameroon government, by any definition, is just bad, terrible. We have a group of people who are behaving like gangsters. They have literally hijacked the faith of the nation, but they do not have ownership of that territory. They are just there, and they will leave, believe me. If you ask, why will someone choose federalism over separation? Well, the truth is, we are not our parents. The constitution that our leaders in 1961 signed up to will never be accepted today because we know better. And believe me, we will not accept a paper federation. We will not accept something that does not make sense. That is why you saw me on TV on day one of their major national dialogue in front of their government cameras. And I told them it was a charade. The next day, they wouldn't allow CRTV cameras to come near me because we are not fools. We know what we want. The type of federalism we are fighting for will be ironclad. Our people will be protected completely to be able to manage our own affairs. That is a promise. We are not going to lay back and accept decentralization light kind of federalism. Thank you.
All right, let me just jump in there, Cece, please.
Very quickly.
Okay. Again, Dr. Wilson, I wish that your articulation could be transformed into reality. Unfortunately, I think after 60 years, we can rightly say, if wishes were horses, right? I wouldn't finish that. But listen, the problem, you call it a government problem. The people in the government. No, I do not see it as a French Cameroon government problem or individual problem, because when you say government, I guess you are referring to the individuals who have led that country up to today. It is not their problem. It is a systemic problem that is ingrained in Francophonism. That is the problem. That is what it is. To the effect that anybody, even when beer lives, anybody that you bring into that system will act just the same as if they were all sons and daughters of the same mother. That is the problem. So there is no guarantee that, oh, if they change this, if they change that, if they do this, if they do that, things will come back to normal. Let me remind you, you quoted the 1961 Constitution. Do you recall that 1961 Constitution stated that under no circumstances can the federal status of this country be revoked? I'm sure you remember that. It is still there. But what happened? It was revoked by a Ahijo, almost like in a coup d'etat. And now you say, oh, we're going to put it on stone. Nothing will ever be changed. Nothing can happen to it. If they could change that, what guarantee do we have that if we get a federation 10 years after, 20 years after, They're not going to, slowly but surely start changing it. So, comrade, we have hit the end of the road, and we are going to hang where we are, and no reversal, no turning back. It is federalism or we die fighting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And since you jumped in with an additional reply, I'll let Wilson also have an additional reply.
All right. Well, again, I keep saying the same thing. I get Mr. Anu. I get where he's coming from. I understand. I completely get him. It's because the government of Cameroon has given us all the reason to doubt them. You know what they say about the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, and their track record is very bad. I get that. I do. But what I'm trying to let you see is that all is not lost. We don't have to burn down the house in search of our freedom. We can still fix this. We can, but we have to work together. And I want to let you know, brother, I want to let you know that Federalists are with you. We form one team when it comes to fighting for our rights and our freedom, our ability to manage our own affairs. We are with you. The only difference we have is how to do that. Are we going to clean the slate, burn down the house, and then start anew? Or we're going to accept that history is what it is? A lot of water has already flown under the bridge. We don't have to cry and go back in the past to recreate a world that no longer exists. But what we can do now and shape the future is to hold those in power accountable. And you may not be seeing it, but yes, they get the message. They get the message, and time will tell. This country will stand up and rise again. We're going to fix it, and we'll all be happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilson. We'll move on to the last question now. And this is for you, Wilson. Chris has stated several times that the removal of the BIR is the one condition that will be necessary for an immediate ceasefire. Can you get on board with that condition? And if so, would the Cameroon Federalist Movement be willing to work with the interim government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia to reach that ceasefire?
Let me just say this so that there is no confusion and there's no ambiguity. The Cameroon Federalist Movement will support any move that would lead to peace. Our people hunger and thirst for peace. Whether it is unilateral ceasefire on the part of the government or on the part of the Ambazonian institution, or bilateral, we will support any good faith attempt to bring back peace to our land. We will support that. And a ceasefire will be a welcome idea and move. It has to be in good faith. It has to be in good faith. The people are tired of just talk. We want concrete steps. I don't see any reason why the Cameroon government cannot announce a ceasefire and say, hey, this thing has been going on for too long. We need to come back as a people and talk to each other. There is no problem in the world that cannot be resolved when people sit together. I told you guys, I grew up in a house. My father was a third-degree chief, and I saw how problems were resolved. Just around a table, magic happens. People come in with very rigid ideas, and then they leave softened. And you say, what happened? Well, dialogue happened. Convincing happened. Human nature took over. We are not as bad as we may seem. We can solve this issue. So yes, we welcome any good faith measure to restore peace. We are with you on this.
Thank you. And Chris, would the interim government be willing to temporarily set aside any differences with the Cameroon Federalist Movement to work together to reach that ceasefire we've been talking about?
Cece, you work together when you are all in agreement. Where you are not in agreement, it is difficult to work together. We believe here at the interim government that anybody who doesn't believe in a free and independent Southern Cameroon is a Cameroonian, French Cameroonian. So it is difficult to suggest that the independent movement can work with federalists. Of course, our ideas are close, but different in that they see themselves as Cameroonians. We see ourselves as Southern Cameroonians. Dr. Wilson mentioned the word the house. We cannot just destroy the house and start all together again. The problem is that there isn't any house. The house doesn't exist anymore. It never existed, because if it existed, we wouldn't have been protesting from 60 years ago, holding conference upon conference, culminating in 1994 with the AAC3 in AAC2, in which our forefathers said, this is the last resort. If Cameroon leaders do not listen to us, get us on the table to discuss going back to a federal system, then we will have no choice but to declare our own independent nation. They did not hear, counted from 1993 to today. It's more than a dozen years, going to scores of years. They never listened to us. And so, no, there is no way we can negotiate with federalists who do not believe in a free and independent Ambazonia. We will discuss or deliberate with any faction or group that believes in a free and independent Ambazonia, but not with any other group that has an alternative view. Thank you.
Just to clarify, we're not talking about getting to the negotiation table. You know, everything after the ceasefire could take place, as you've said previously, during negotiations. This is working with them. My question pertained to whether you would be willing to work with that group for the removal of the BIR, which would then result in the ceasefire, and then you move forward to any negotiations that would be necessary. Would you still be opposed to that?
Oh yeah, any collaboration that leads to a ceasefire is very much welcome. It doesn't matter from who it comes from, for as long as there is then a timetable of what happens next. Because we don't just want the kind of peace that just let things going back to normal and the oppression continues and a lot of public continues doing what they do with impunity. That is not the kind of peace we are looking for. A ceasefire must then, first of all, as I mentioned, there has to be a coming together. And if at that moment the federalists will come on our side and say, hey, we want a ceasefire, let the BIROs pull out, let their soldiers pull out, we will very much be glad to work with them. But again, a ceasefire is not just enough. There has to be a timetable of what happened next, and that starts with coming together. We cannot sit in the diaspora, phone Cameroon, or Cameroon sits there, phone us in the diaspora and say, okay, we agree to a ceasefire, we pull out and you lay down your arms. No, we would have to follow the Swiss process, the Swiss initiative. Let's come together, discuss a ceasefire, discuss what comes next. Thank you.
Understood. Now, gentlemen, time for your closing comments. Wilson, would you like to begin? And then we'll go to you, Chris.
Thank you, Cece, and I want to thank my brother again for this very, very exciting back and forth. In the course of this 90 minutes, I've gotten to know my brother more, and I think we should do more of this kind for discussions. In conclusion, what I would say is that our people have suffered enough. And for how long? How many lives are we prepared to lose and destroy before we realize that we need to sit together as one family and to resolve our differences? Because there are real fundamental problems that can be solved. The onus is on the Cameroon government. They have to make the grown-up move, because as of this moment, they are representing the people. They have the mandate to run the country. If you have power and authority, you must have responsibility and accountability. The Cameroon government should facilitate, with the help of external stakeholders, the resolution of this crisis. It can be done. We are a family. You see, my village is less than 40 miles from Mr. Anu's village. We are brothers. I'm not French Cameroonian. I am a Kumba man. I am your brother. We are close. The bond between us is strong. I don't have any problem with Mr. Anu. I may have a problem with some of his ideas, but the bond between the two of us is strong. But the two of us have a big problem with the Cameroon government. They are not doing what they should do. My hope, and certainly our organization will do whatever we can to bring peace back to Cameroon. And I hope my brother and his team and his people will do the same, whatever we can. We can have differences. Yes, it's actually okay to have differences. But let's come together first as a people, as one family, and I think we can do this. Thank you, Cece. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And Chris?
Well, Cece, once more, I'd like to appreciate you putting this discussion together, and of course, your conference out there to look into possible solutions to this conflict. I like also to appreciate Dr. Wilson for coming on board to have this conversation with me. I think that people listening to it should be very enriched listening to both of us and be able to make the divide as to the differences in what we are talking about. I don't know how else I can put it. Dr. Wilson has explained why a federal system will be good for the country. But I think within this 90 minutes or so, I think I have given the other side of it for the people who have an interest in this struggle to understand why we no longer want a federal system. Because there was one before, that one was killed, murdered, and without any guarantee that you go into one, it will survive. There is no need to even talk about it. I mentioned here that the Parliament of Cameroon for 5 years of this conflict has not met once to talk about it. And yet, Dr. Wilson wants us to believe they are brothers. The Senate has not talked about it for 5 years. They declared war on us. And how can somebody say, brothers, we are brothers? Do brothers declare war against brothers? I don't think so. We've had this. Every Southern Cameroonian has had this onto the neck. and with a mother of 30,000 of our people, and the displaced and the refugees, we just think there is absolutely no way for us to look back thinking maybe, just maybe, federation would work. We don't see it working. We've gone past it. We are resolved to fight and fight and fight. And I think as a Southern Sudanese, we will get there. As Eritrea, we will get there. As Somaliland, we will get there. That's our resolve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And if I may chime in as an objective observer, having listened to both of you today, I see so many more commonalities than I do differences between you. You both so passionately care about your people and want to move forward in separate ways. Yes, there are differences there, but the passion is there and the resolve is there to overcome all of the obstacles that have been thrown in your way. And I just want you to know that Global Justice Journal will do all that we can to facilitate next steps, and we will stand beside you every step of the way.
Thank you, Cece.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate that.